New video has emerged that was filmed by the U.S. immigration officer who fatally shot a Minnesota woman in her car this week. The verified video documents 37-year-old Renee Good sitting in her car and her wife standing nearby in a verbal exchange with the officer. Good then puts the car in gear and drives away, after which the officer opens fire. We'll now show you the 47-second video in its entirety.
I'm not mad at you. Show your face. I'm not mad at you. It's okay. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the car. Get out of the car. Oh!
That fatal shooting has, of course, sparked days of protests in the U.S. and could further inflame tensions in Minneapolis and elsewhere. DW correspondent Janelle Dumalaun joins us now. She is in Minneapolis. Janelle, thank you for being here again. What kind of responses have you heard as more details and videos emerge from the shooting?
Nahal, the responses and where they're coming from have been pretty much what you would expect. So we heard from the likes of Vice President JD Vance, who tweeted out this video and said that it was proof that the agent's life was in danger and that he was acting in self-defense. We also heard from the White House spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, who also posted this video and said the media had been smearing this ICE agent who was only properly trying to defend himself from getting run over. The Department of Homeland Security, much the same message, saying that it corroborated what it had been saying all along, that Renee Good was trying to impede law enforcement and that she had weaponized her vehicle and tried to use it to kill or harm law enforcement. Now, of course, it goes without saying that not everybody has this perspective, and what they in turn would point to would be the other videos that have emerged that have showed this agent walking away from the scene unharmed with little to indicate that he had just survived an attempted hit and run. But it's interesting, everybody watching this very same video, their reactions seem to have fallen along partisan lines, but it also reflects this broader dynamic towards around how Renee Good's death has been framed. The administration has sought to portray her as somebody who is responsible for her own death, while people have been out on the streets here in Minnesota because they believed she died at the hands of an officer who was abusing his power.
How are people then in Minneapolis coping with this tragedy 2 days after the shooting?
You know, it's still a highly emotional atmosphere. People are still coming to terms with what happened. And basically, there are two sites where Minneapolitans have been going to express themselves. One of them is the memorial of Renee Good, some 20 minutes from here. And there, the mood is more grieving, more in solidarity. While here in front of the Whipple Federal Building, we've seen for the past 2 days, federal agents face off with protesters. It's much more volatile. It's much more of a hair-trigger atmosphere. Now, the protest size has waxed and waned from hundreds to dozens and hundreds again, depending on the time of day. This is a site where we've seen pepper balls, mace, and other crowd dispersal methods employed, and a few arrests. Now, as you can see here, the federal agents aren't here anymore. They've erected barricades instead, and the number of protesters has also dwindled. But it really does seem that this mood is likely to continue with more protests planned for tonight and the weekend.
That's DW correspondent Janelle Dumalaun. Thank you so much. Claire Finkelstein is a law professor at the University of Pennsylvania. She joins us now. She helped support California's fight against the Trump administration's deployment of National Guard troops to the state. Claire, federal officials and local leaders are clashing over the circumstances of Renee's killing, while local investigators are also being excluded from the FBI's probe. Is this standard practice?
It's really not. It's much more typical for local officials to work with the FBI or whoever's conducting the investigation. And indeed, in the beginning, the Trump administration said that they would be including local officials in the investigation, and then they changed their mind and backtracked. So in general, the strongest investigations come about when state and local officials are able to partner with federal investigators. And that would be the more routine way to handle such an investigation. It doesn't look as though there were any local police on the scene, though it's very hard to tell from the video. So that is one aspect that could tilt them in the direction of running a federal-only investigation. But the local police know their population, would have a better sense of that community, have a better sense of the neighborhood. And since issues have come up around provocation and what the local community was doing there, whether or not they were trying to threaten or provoke officers, it would make much more sense for it to be a joint investigation.
In that case, help us understand what guardrails are in place to ensure that the investigation on the federal level is free and fair.
There are very few real guardrails. In this case, of course, there are multiple videotapes. And so there's sort of a publicity factor and press that act as something of guardrails, because if the results of the investigation come out to be very much at odds with what everyone can see with their own eyes, the feds will have some explaining to do. Now, in a more official capacity, of course, there is an inspector general for the Department of Homeland Security, and there is an inspector general for the Department of Justice. So if it looks as though the investigation is really a corrupt or an improper undertaking, the inspector general could always do a sort of meta report on that investigation and look into whether or not the investigation has been biased in some way.
Mm-hmm. Now, also, Vice President JD Vance has defended the ICE officer and said he is protected by absolute immunity. Is that accurate under U.S. law?
That really is not accurate. And let's remember that this shooting took place about 8 blocks from where George Floyd was killed. And Derek Chauvin, the primary officer involved in that case, was convicted of several different counts, including, I believe, a 3rd-degree murder count. So there is no reason why any officer involved in law enforcement would have complete immunity. What they tend to have, at least local police would have, and there's no reason why ICE officers would be any different, is a sort of qualified immunity to the extent that they are operating within their job capacity. They would have immunity that particularly works with regard to civil suits, but criminal immunity with regard to a murder charge really should not apply. And the general doctrine is that if they are violating the law, then they are not acting in their official capacity, and their role as federal agents ought not to shield them in that case.
Mm-hmm. Having put all of that on the table, how likely is it that the ICE officer involved in this incident will face charges?
Right now, it doesn't look very likely from what the federal government is saying, and Kristi Noem in particular is saying. I mean, it'll be a referral. It would have to be a referral to Pam Bondi, of course, following an investigation. But it doesn't look as though anybody in this administration is really prepared to face the consequences of what appears to have happened there. The deeper concern, and perhaps the explanation for this, is that ICE officers don't appear to be getting adequate training in the use of force and in their interaction with civilians and with protesters. And so, there are a number of points that people have been making about the interaction with protesters here. For example, standing in front of a vehicle is very much something that law enforcement officers are advised not to do. They should not be standing anywhere in the front of a car when making an arrest or trying to give instructions to a suspect or a protester, because there is always the risk through either confusion or intentional action that the person in that vehicle will accelerate into them.
I think we'll have to leave it there. That's Claire Finkelstein, a professor of law and philosophy at the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for your insights.